So again, all of these books are talking about the same basic concept, which is we as entrepreneurs, if we want to be effective, need to really kind of drill down and keep drilling and find what is that stuff that matters.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade-thinking beer-brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klinck proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klinck.
Hey there. Welcome to episode 59 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and welcome to 2019. It is crazy how fast 2018 flew by, but this episode is coming out on New Year's Day of 2019, so whenever you're listening to it, we have moved past 2018. In this episode, I'm going to do something kind of a little bit special. I'm going to talk about one of my goals that I had in 2018. Specifically, I set a goal to read 52 marketing, business, or personal development books during the year. The idea was every week, and it didn't have to happen weekly, but my goal was that I wanted to read a book a week for the year. And when I told people that, they thought I was kind of crazy. And it was a big goal because these were not, light reading kinds of books. These were not fiction. They were all to try to learn, to get better, to grow. And, it was definitely a big goal. And this week, I'm going to tell you what I learned along the way of trying to reach that goal in 2018. So that's what we have in store for this week. I'm going to give some important lessons I learned, etc. But before we dive in, this week's episode, as always, is brought to you by the Online Genius podcast community on Facebook. That's where we go deeper, talk about the themes of the week, talk about what we're doing. And it's where you get a chance to really kind of interact with me one-on-one in a very direct way without having to pay me the $500 an hour you'd have to pay me to hire me. So it's a chance for you to get questions answered, but also interact with other online entrepreneurs who are trying to do it the right way, who understand they got to do the sexy stuff and the non-sexy stuff. So it's a really good group of entrepreneurs who are building amazing businesses. So love for you to join me. Or join us in that group. And you can do so absolutely free by going to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, that's youronlinegenius.com/community. And, you join the group and introduce yourself and then, start talking and start interacting with people. So with that, let's talk about my crazy goal of reading 52 books in 2018. Now, I've got a confession. I did not reach my goal. I didn't hit 52, and I'm kind of, bummed about that, but I did pretty good. I got to somewhere between 30 and 35 books. Candidly, I wasn't tracking well, or I lost my tracking sheet, so I'm not sure. There may be a few that didn't end up on the list that I did read that I forgot about, but I'm somewhere in the 35 range. I know I'm above 30. I think it's 32 or 33 I was able to actually come up with and put on a list. So I expect there were a couple of more that I missed. So, that's a pretty impressive feat, right? Because it still means I was reading, 3 books a month, which isn't bad. That's a pretty good number to hit for a whole year. And some of them were books that I was rereading. I was going back to some books that I'd read before and that I wanted to, go back and revisit. And I do that sometimes because I recognize that where I am today, I will get things out of books that I wouldn't have gotten a couple years ago when I read them the first time. And ironically, what I'm going to tell you is right now, as I'm recording this, which is in early December, I'm rereading Tribes by Seth Godin because I got to admit something that I think we as entrepreneurs are not supposed to admit. The first time I read that book, I didn't get it. And I don't mean I didn't get it, but I didn't get what the big deal was. I was like, okay. But the problem was I first read that, I don't know, probably 3 years ago at a time when I didn't have a tribe and the notion of creating a tribe was kind of weird. And so I think that, and again, I literally just started rereading it yesterday and got a few pages in. So, I'm not even far enough in. But I believe that where I am today, as I'm recording this in late 2018, but in 2019, is so different from where I was when I first read the book that I'm going to get things out of the book now that I wouldn't have. So I do that often. I go and reread. But others of the books that I read in 2018 were new. I hadn't read them yet. I was trying to learn a skill, or it was something someone suggested to me, etc. So what I'll do is in the show notes, you'll see my list of books that I read in 2018. And again, I'm recording this as of early December. I'm reading Tribes, and I got a couple of other Seth Godin books on deck. So I may get closer to 40, but we'll see where I am at the end of the year. What I do want to say is I started strong, like we all do with our goals at the beginning of the year. And through February, I was ahead of schedule. I don't remember how far ahead of schedule. I don't think I was double. I hadn't read 2 books a week, but I was doing good. I was definitely ahead of the pace. Then life got in the way, right? Things got busy. I started building this business and things started to get away from me. And, I say get away from me. I started to have way too many balls in the air. And so reading books kind of fell, it was one of the balls that fell for a while. Things then picked up again later in the year. And part of that was that I started using Audible. And now I am a Audible freak. I rarely read books. Some books I buy and read, but most of the books now I listen to via Audible. And the reason why is that I go out for a very long walk every morning, except when I'm injured or sick. I'm out for like 2 hours or more on a walk or walk and run in the morning. And that's my time where I listen to podcasts and listen to ebooks. And that's what I do. And if you just start doing math and you start saying, okay, if it's 2.5 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's that's 17 hours, I think, or 17 or 18 hours that I can listen to. So I'm able to churn through now, kind of multiple books a week, depending on kind of what the podcasts that I'm listening to at the time are. But so I'm able to kind of keep up that pace. So, that's what I'm doing. And that was my trick. And again, I'm setting the same goal this year. I'm going to try to hit 52 in 2019. And my hope is that with Audible, I will actually get there and it'll help me to actually hit that goal. So that's kind of the background. Now what I want to do is I'm going to share with you the 4 most valuable insights I got from reading the books. And these aren't tactics. Some of the books I read were about tactics, and I go back to those things. For example, one of the books was, How to Write Copy That Sells by Ray Edwards. So I will periodically go back to that book because he has suggestions and advice on writing headlines and things like that. So I'll go back to that, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's a tactic, not an insight. The same thing, I read Launch by Jeff Walker. And so again, I'll go back to that to get thoughts on product launch formula. I'm not really using the product launch formula, but I get ideas from it and can take insights from it. Same thing, I reread Russell Brunson's 2 books, Expert Secrets and .com Secrets. Again, I didn't take huge insights from it, but I will go back to those periodically to think through concepts and ideas. But so that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about are the high-level things, and some of them I got from the books. Some of them, the books helped me crystallize what I was thinking and what I had been doing or starting to do before. But these are kind of the 4 most important lessons that I either learned from one of these books or these books helped me crystallize in my mind kind of and put together. So the first insight is to be a giver. And if you've listened to me, you've heard me talk about this, and maybe you're tired of hearing me. But, I had been doing the giving and I had been, I'd already kind of made the transition, but then I went and read the book, The Go Giver. That is a book that I believe every entrepreneur should read. It is an insightful book. It's short. It is easy to get through. It's told as a parable, meaning told as a story, but you get lessons out of it. And you get valuable lessons about kind of what I have been preaching to you, if you listen to me very much, about being a giver. and it talks about various aspects of it. And you learn these different concepts and these different ideas behind how giving kind of just ultimately permeates who you are. I don't want to, this isn't giving too much of a secret away, but the Go-Giver, it's the story of, I think he's a salesman, if I remember correctly, who has to hit a quota, and he hears about this guy that he can potentially learn from that can teach him all of this stuff. And so it's like the last week of the quarter, and he's trying to get this done. So he reaches out, and the guy is going to teach him. And so that's it's the story of what he does and what he experiences in learning from this guy over a week's period. But one of the things that's interesting, and this is one of the concrete lessons that I take from it and insights, and that is at one point during the book, during the story, the sales guy, and I won't remember all the details, but essentially someone that he was trying to make a sale to, basically said, look, my client doesn't want to go with you. I don't know, it's because you're not big enough, or you don't have this experience or whatever. And so he's crushed at first by that. And then he hangs up the phone. But then in the spirit of being a giver, he realizes that he can refer this potential client to one of his competitors who will do a better job of serving them and can meet the needs, the things that he can't offer that, means he can't get the job. This competitor can do. And so he reaches out and gives that referral. And that's something that I think a lot of us would be reluctant to do. I mean, refer someone to a competitor? Whoa, that's kind of crazy. Well, I've taken that spirit. If someone comes to me and I can't help them because for one reason or another, it's not someone that I can help, I don't have a second thought about sending them to someone who might be thought of as a competitor of mine. Meaning, if someone comes to me and they want a certain kind of template and I don't have it, but I know one of the other lawyers who serves online entrepreneurs does, I will send them there. I'll say, go there. Or, if people want something, I have sent them to all kinds of other lawyers and I don't think about it twice. And I think you need to approach life that way because, again, ultimately our goal is to serve people. And I'll give you another small example of this that maybe will drive the point home if you're saying, whoa, I'm not ready to send people to a competitor. But let me give you another example. So earlier in the year, I did a list scrub sequence. So I sent emails out. I basically did my list. I segmented and I said, okay, these are people who literally have not opened a single email I've sent in multiple months. They've been on my list the whole time. They're just not engaging. So I sent them a series of emails that said, hey, if you don't click on this link, I'm going to have to delete you from my list. And I gave them multiple opportunities. But one person responded and said, well, I don't click on links in emails, but I'd like to stay on your list. And so responded rather than clicking on the list. Now, theoretically, that would have meant that I wouldn't have kept this person on my list. Based on the automations, I wouldn't. And theoretically, from my perspective, if this person is never going to click on a link in an email, I'm not sure how much value that person has to me as a business owner on my email list, right? Because, well, she's never going to click on my link to go to one of my podcasts. She's never going to click on one of my links to go to a promotion. She's never going to click on a link to sign up for a webinar. She's never going to click on a link to buy a product from me. So, whatever. So some people might have said, well, I'm just going to kick that person on my list because they're not valuable to me. I didn't. I said, hey, I want to give. This person is getting value from being on my list. I want to continue to give to that person. And so that's another way, and maybe a more subtle way, something you can do that isn't maybe giving money to a competitor, but you can see that if you have the goal of service, if your overarching principle is, I want to serve people and give value to them, that's what you would do. It becomes a no-brainer to you. So I commend you to read The Go-Giver. It's a book that I say you definitely should read. Every entrepreneur should read it. You should take it to heart, and you should find ways to apply it to your life and to your business. The second most valuable insight is, it's basically about focus. And it comes from a couple of different books, the most obvious of which is The One Thing, and then the other one is Essentialism. I read both of those books this year. I recommend both of them. The One Thing was more valuable to me than Essentialism, but both of them were good. But the concept of the one thing is to find the one thing that you should be focusing on. In other words, what is the one thing that you could be spending your time on, that you would be getting the most bang for your buck for? It's the most important concept. It is the most valuable concept. It is the highest level work. And so those are the things we should be spending our time on. And a lot of us aren't. Right? Look, this is a concept that isn't all that hard for us, right? I mean, we know about it from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Again, a book I reread this year, where, one of the principles is just this, that you're going to focus on kind of those most valuable tasks you should be working on. Similarly, if, another book I read this year was The 12-Week Year, which kind of, is, think of it as a method to maybe help you focus on this, because you're really condensing things down into short periods. So at any given time, you have to be focusing on those things that are most important to you. And the concept behind all of these books is that you ultimately have to focus your attention on a very limited number of things. You can't do everything. And if you try to do everything, and if you try to make everything a priority, nothing's a priority. I forget which book it was. I think it may have been in Essentialism that tells this story. But the word priority comes from an ancient language that refers to the important thing. So you can't have priorities in the traditional sense. You can only have a priority. You can have the one thing that comes first. And the point of all of these books is to help getting you thinking that way and focusing and really kind of saying, this is what matters, and everything else I'm not going to worry about unless I get the one thing done. There were similar thoughts of this in one of the books I read is called Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First and some other books. But in Clockwork, he talks about finding your QBR, your queen bee role. In a sense, this is the one thing that is most important to your business. The one thing, the one role that needs to be performed for your business to succeed. So again, all of these books are talking about the same basic concept, which is we as entrepreneurs, if we want to be effective, need to really kind of drill down and keep drilling and find what is that stuff that matters. And if you followed me and listened to my previous few podcasts where I was talking about planning, and you heard my themes for the year of systematize, delegate, and scale, you're definitely getting a sense that I'm getting that, right? I mean, my plan for 2019 is all about those things. It's about saying, I can't deal with everything. I have to focus on the important, the truly important thing or things in my business, and everything else I ultimately need to get someone else doing. And I commend you to read, again, The One Thing and Essentialism, and Clockwork is another good one that I mentioned, and 12-Week Year. All of these books, and again, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a classic that we should all be thinking about and reading. So all of those books are telling you this same idea of focus on your one most important thing. Once you identify it, then you have to protect it. And one of the things that I learned that the One Thing book talked about was time blocking, of setting aside, time every day. So, if you look at my calendar internally on my system, I have from 9 a.m. to noon every day blocked out, and it says Bobby's Focus Blocks. That is my time to be focused on the important things, the one thing at any given time. And it might be that right now my one thing is writing emails because those need to be done for my launch. Or it could be, in the future, it will be the one thing is building connections or finding ways and doing those things. So those are the tasks that I learned from the insight. This year, I'm much more focused than I was last year, and it's progressed. And so, I think that's a valuable insight that every entrepreneur needs to learn. And, you can get it from a lot of these different books. Now, the third is find your why. This is my third insight. And again, this came from Start With Why, the classic book. And again, I read that as a result of signing up for Marie Forleo's B School. And it was in like the pre-launch, not even in the main thing. It was in the bonus for people, if you signed up early. And so I think she had a program called like Start the Right Business. And it walks you through this. And I grabbed the book and I said, okay, I'm going to read the book. And, when you read the book, it's about your business's why and all those things. But it got me thinking at a much more, much deeper level. And again, if you've listened to the last few podcasts, you've heard me talk about this. I found a couple of whys, and I talked about this in the 20 Days of Planning in my community, in the group. To me, your why is broken into multiple things. One, you have your personal why. You need to be connected with what is it that motivates you? What is it that drives you that affects the decisions you make in your business? And then the other piece is your kind of professional why. And, the way I broke it down and try to explain it is that my personal why is my family, right? To me, that is what matters. I need to have a profession that allows me to be present and have time with my family. And I use the analogy of a lot of lawyers I know who are horribly unhappy, who travel all the time, who are burning the midnight oil, who don't control their own schedule. And that was me for a long time. And me finding this personal why and actually being able to admit it is part of the reason that I basically 10 years or a little more than 10 years into my career said, I'm going to stop doing what I've been doing my whole career, changed my course entirely in spite of the fact that I was really good at what I did and made good money doing it, because it wasn't what I wanted to do and it didn't make me happy. And you need to connect with your why, or you're never going to be able to make those hard decisions, right? When you connect with your why, it's easier to make those decisions that a lot of other people look at and say, God, I couldn't do that. I couldn't give up a cushy job making a bunch of money for this other thing. Well, if you know that what you're doing doesn't serve your why, you can't. And so I commend you to do that. Now, my professional why, and the way I explain this is, your why can't simply be, I want to make money and do that. And again, you could have various whys. I mean, maybe making money is an important part of your why, or maybe being famous, or, serving community, et cetera. There can be a lot of different personal whys. But then you have to have some kind of connection to the people you serve or what you are doing. There are a lot of these entrepreneurs out there who jump from thing to thing to thing to thing. They're the people who, they were selling, or they were doing Bitcoin, and then there was something else and something after that. And it's basically just they jump from thing to thing because they don't have any passion or connection to what they're doing. And I believe that you need to, and this is an insight I get from reading these books, is you need to have a connection either to the people you serve or to the particular thing you're doing. There are lawyers who are, and I use lawyers because that's obviously the world I come from, but there are lawyers who their professional why is that they want to save the environment, right? That's what they want to do. So, that then shapes what they do, and they're passionate about that. And so that will keep them going. My professional why is I love serving online entrepreneurs because it means that I play some small role in seeing you serve the people you serve. And so I get energy from that. And part of my why professionally is that I saw the results, the bad stuff that happened when people didn't get the protection they needed, et cetera. So that's my personal why. My professional why. So that's why I'm able to jump out of bed. So this was another one of my big insights of really connecting with those whys. And once you do, that'll make the other decisions in your business pretty easy because you'll be guided by those whys. If you have a personal why like mine about, family, you're not going to take on or build a business where you're going to be subject to other people's demands and can't spend time with your family. You're not going to take on a role in your business that would mean that you're going to have to travel all the time because you're not going to be there for your family. So you can kind of see how connecting with your why. And again, we did this in the planning process, but this was a huge insight that I got from reading the books this year because it reconnected me to these things. And I pivoted again this year, not on the personal, but on the professional piece of that my lodestar here was affordability, that was a big piece of what I wanted to do so that I could serve as many people as possible. Now, the final lesson that I learned, or valuable insight that I want to talk about from my year of reading books, is to find your keystone habit. And this is from the book, The Power of Habit. I think it's The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And the concept behind this, a lot of what we do day in and day out is built on habit. If you think about it, you're not actively thinking about a lot of the stuff you do. You just kind of do it. You hit it, something cues you and you go into a routine. And a lot of that book is about the power of habit and the notion that, a lot of these things can become, overwhelming and not overwhelming, but, they take over and it can be hard to change a habit. And it's much harder, the studies show, to actually stop a habit. What you have to do is kind of replace a bad habit with a good habit. And the book talks about all of those things. But one of the concepts that he talks about is that there is, for a lot of people, there is what's called a keystone habit. And what a keystone habit is it's one positive habit or routine that if you perform that habit, routine, etc., it will have positive impacts on all of these other parts of your business. It'll kind of be like a domino effect. In other words, if you consistently do that one habit, that will cause you to do the other positive habits and routines that you want to do, and it will prevent you from doing the negative habits and routines. And I got to be honest, when I first read that, I was like, that's crazy. What's he talking about? But then I started thinking about it, and then I recognized that I have a keystone habit. I have a very clear, obvious keystone habit. I have been the best at performing the routines, the habits, the things that I want to do, meeting goals, etc., when I do one thing. And that is, I get up in the morning at 5 a.m. or by 5 a.m. I'm out the door at 5 a.m. exercising for 2+ hours. That is my keystone habit. When I do that, everything else falls into place. When I do that exercise, I eat right. I'm not really tempted to go and gorge on pizza and cookies, which I normally am. I'll be honest with you. I love pizza. I love cookies. And often I feel like, strong temptation. When I'm doing that exercise, I don't. And it's not even a conscious thing. I'm not having to say to myself, well, I don't want to screw up all that exercise. No, I'm not tempted. It's just not even a thought in my mind. But it's also an important keystone habit for business. I get so much more done in a day where I hit that. And again, everybody talks about morning routine and all of these different things. And a lot of people have a very in-depth morning routine and meditation. Hey, I meditated. Hey, that's cool. That's good. I've done these other things where I do journaling. And for a lot of people, that's important. And what I can tell you is all that stuff's fine. But for me, it's not important. What's important and what matters is me getting up and doing that exercise. And if I do that, I am on for the rest of the day. And here's the other thing that I found. And because, often I think this will happen with a keystone habit. Some of it is probably just the keystone that when you do it, that triggers something in your mind and in your body to do things right. But in my case, there's an added benefit, which is when I do that 2 hours of exercise, guess what? By 7:30 in the morning, I have listened to 2.5 hours of either ebook or podcast that is helping me learn and build my skills. So by 7:30 in the morning, when I do this, if you think about it, I have gotten in a ton of exercise. I've gotten in more exercise than most people will get in a whole day. I've gotten in more learning than most people will have gotten in a whole day. And so then at that point, my life is easy. I mean, the rest of my day is cake because there is nothing that there's no thought of, I got to go get in some steps or some exercise or ooh, I need to go listen to that podcast. No, it's done. At that point, I can focus on, hey, we're going to loop back to something else. I can focus on my one thing that morning. And I can focus on my daughter and spending time with her before she goes off to school. And then the one thing. And then all day I'm focusing on the one thing and getting that done and knocking that out of the park. And then everything else happens in order. So that is my keystone habit. That may not be your keystone habit, but you need to find your keystone habit. And once you find that keystone habit, once you find that one habit that is the trigger for you doing the stuff you need to be doing, you need to guard it with everything you've got. And that's why now, sadly, as I'm recording this, I injured my leg and then I've had a cold. So it's been a while, but once I get over this cold, I'm back at it and I'm going to guard it and I'm going to, continue this into the new year. So that was a real eye opener for me. So I encourage you, again, read The Power of Habit if you're interested, but more importantly, go find your keystone habit. Find that thing that you need to do every day and do it. And once you've done that, you'll be in much better shape. So those are my 4 big insights. Be a giver from The Go-Giver. Focus on the one thing. Again, I talked about a bunch of books there. The One Thing, Essentialism, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The 12-Week Year. It's all in there. Find that thing that's most important to you in your business. Then find your whys, connect with them, and they will make everything easier. And find your keystone habit and guard it. You do those things, and I think you'll be in pretty good shape. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I encourage you to read the books. Again, the list of books that I got through in 2018 is on the show notes page. And in the community, hey, I'd love for you to come into the community. If you haven't joined yet, join. Go to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, youronlinegenius.com/community. And I'd love to hear about the books that you have read or are reading that are valuable. Again, my goal this year is to get through 52 more. So I would really love to hear your insights and maybe give me ideas, and maybe we can share things and really help each other find the most valuable insights. So head over to the community and do that. And other than that, I will see you next week for episode 60 of the Online Genius Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.